Alright, and we're back. Had a little pee break as well, just so we could settle in for the long reading here. Let's talk about Bertrude. Let's talk about Bertrude for a minute. Oh wait, are we proper length for the mic? Well, gotta readjust everything. Sorry, I probably should have done this before the start of the video, but too late now. Several exiles of the Nightwings cared more for the plan of Sandalwood than their return home from the downside. The crone called Big Bertrude was a prime example. She had found a suitable environment to live, with the dismal region known as Flagging Hands. There she had built up a thriving place of business known to many exiles in the land. With the rites having ended, she returned to her preoccupations, working away almost as though nothing had happened. When one gets to be more than 400 years old, perhaps then even monumental events such as the culmination of the rites or the collapse of the Commonwealth are seen as trifling matters. Much of her effort was doubtless due to the influence of Sandalwood, someone whom she had admired now for decades. He had made clear that he could not requite her feelings for him, but what could have been a hurtful dismissal led only to a deeper understanding between the two of them. By and large, Bertrude kept focused on her work. Whether casting small enchantments or imbuing talismans, the work brought her a sense of purpose, she would say. In the Commonwealth, such services were strictly forbidden, but in Downside there was a real need for simple luxuries, which the competing slug market could not always provide. Thus did Big Bertrude continue to live up to her name, and the tales of her days with the Nightwings made her that much more the living legend. Alright, Pamitha. After regaining her freedom, Pamitha Thane found herself in a different position. Having once betrayed her people of the Nightwing remnants, she knew that she would not be welcome in her native home. She did not trust the Commonwealth either. Instead, she had found her place among Volfred Sandalwood's agents, who were busy doing their parts to fulfill the plan. As it turned out, the plan was a success. Pamitha Thane stood shoulder to shoulder with her once fellow former exiles, and truly they were a sight to behold. A disturbing rumor later spread that night, the Highwing remnants were slated to mount an assault which for some reason never came to pass. Pamitha denied any knowledge of her involvement. Afterwards, Pamitha played an active part in negotiating terms between the Highwing remnants and then the new nation that would become the Sarian Union. Her previous attempt at something of the sort led her to exile. She must have felt some satisfaction to succeed this time around. Sometime later, Pamitha had an unexpected run-in with Rookie Greentail, with whom she had spent a fair amount of time while traveling with the Nightwings. Under these new sets of circumstances, it turned out that the two had much more to talk about, and more in common. God damn it. They would often put to test which one was able to outdrink the other. It is unclear as to which one of them prevailed in that contest in the end. One day, Pamitha received an invitation to return to the Highwing remnants, where she was to be fully pardoned. She held out a hope that she might see her blood sister Tamitha there, knowing full well that Tamitha did not regain her freedom. Tamitha did later learn that Pamitha was welcomed by her people. However, she never responded to her blood sister's attempt to contact her. Pamitha, in turn, did not expect forgiveness from her at any point. Nonetheless, she kept on trying to reach out, she said, to ruffle up her feathers just a bit. Later, when asked, Pamitha Thane admitted that she felt as though she had no home to call her own. This was during an interview conducted amid an extensive trip abroad, for she had traveled thousands of leagues beyond the bounds of the Sarian Union. Pamitha continued to journey thus, citing that it reminded her of when she was younger, and could fly unfettered. After her liberation, Jodario soon became an icon of the movement that led to the collapse of the Commonwealth and the rise of the Sarian Union. Her horns and stern countenance inspired the people to believe that she was Solium Mur, reborn. She became a great, and if reluctant, leader. In the uncertain times that followed, Jodi's seasoned expertise often came into play both in matters of security and of state. For instance, she conscripted and trained a team of volunteers in public safety. The community did not know what to make of such a cordial bunch at first, but soon came to value their services. They have stood for the people ever since, and we celebrate their founding day each year. She remained close with Hedwyn all through this experience, and they supported each other through their struggles many times. She kept an eye on Bay, who nonetheless demonstrated a surprising knack to get by on her own, though Jodi was always willing to provide assistance, just in case. She continued training on her own, a regimen that grew stricter with each passing year. There were those who sought to train with her, and she sometimes obliged. There remained one other constant in her life. She would always remember her days among the Nightwings, and with fondness for the most part. Okay. Bay. The Commonwealth has never provided a sense of home for the one they called Bay the Bloodless, so she wasn't surprised on her return that she was so well treated. She was surprised. She felt uneasy about it, and besides, she knew that she would do her best to fulfill the pledge she had made to her friends. Even she could not have expected the impact she would have on the events that followed, which gave rise to the Sarian Union. Despite not fitting the image of any of the 8 scribes, Bay nonetheless stood out along the others, amid the teeming masses on the night of the scribes' return. She spoke of the scribes with such conviction and sincerity that the crowd was very moved. After the fall of the Commonwealth, there was a renewed interest in the legend of the 8 scribes and many new interpretations of their histories and teachings. Bay found herself at the center of this. Her way of speaking continued to compel a growing audience. She swayed many people from their astralist beliefs. Upon the eighth word, the Theocratic sect believing that the 8 scribes were more than mortal, and their words divine. Surely a book created by the scribes was more than a fable, but a genuine artifact, though perhaps lost in time. Okay. Which has lost favor with the people during the reign of the Commonwealth. Sought her out and asked her formally to join, and she did, right away. Through it all, she would wonder how her little friend Tizo had fared. While they were divided now by great distance, she always remembered him in her heart. He always remained in her heart. Same difference. She cited her relationship with Jody as the single most important in her life. Jody would always provide for her a circumspect perspective and the wisdom of her experience. Whenever she felt genuinely in doubt, which was not very often, she sought out the reader of the Nightwings. If there was anyone whom she trusted as much as the scribes, it was her. Bay always was devoted to her faith, but more so to her friends. Many people in the Sarian Union cited that her gentle manner and unwavering conviction helped them brave the changing times with courage and with grace. Okay. After Rookie Greentail earned back his freedom, he returned to a lavish welcome ceremony in the Commonwealth, as was a tendency for liberated exiles. It was nothing he could have hoped for. It was everything he could have hoped for, and soon he was well off, surrounded by luxury and choosing between various exciting opportunities. However, he must have given in to his better judgment, as he did end up siding with Wolfred Sandalwood's revolutionary forces, as he promised. On the night of the scribe's return, Greentail was there with many others, inspiring the masses. He never looked prouder, the very image of Jomer Minimane himself. When dawn finally came, it became clear to the Commonwealth that everybody knew the Commonwealth would be no more. He realized many new opportunities awaited. He began quite a lucrative career for himself, manufacturing and selling replica merchandise inspired by the downside. His main struggle was to meet demand. An aspect of his conscience cautioned him against making light of such a thing, but the money was too good, and soon his family was as well off as they always had been. One of his orders of business was to seek out one of his old companions, Pamela Thing, to whom he took a liking during their quest for freedom. We bonded further over love of drink and supported one another through uncertain times that lay in store. He also kept in close touch with Gilman, ever the perfect practice partner. They would train together, often taking care to stay in tip-top shape as much as possible throughout the years. Greentail always did his best to keep in touch with all his many friends and knew that he owed his fortunes to them. He made a special point of staying close with the group of friends he came to know so well during his time with the Nightwings, wherever they were. They shared a special understanding that put even Greentail at a loss for words sometimes. Alright, let's check out what Mr. Gilman here accomplished. When the born Gilman returned to the Commonwealth, he believed that he had regained something even more important than his freedom, his honor. Gilman relinquished his knighthood and declined an opportunity to serve as a captain on the Blood Border. He was not interested in fighting any longer. Yet, as it is sometimes the case with those such as he, a circumstance soon came about in which there was a need for him to once again make use of his military training. Thankfully, however, his scribes returned and ended peacefully. Gilman was on edge throughout the night, expecting violence to erupt at any moment, but the moment never came. When the matter was at last put to rest, and Gilman truly knew his time as a knight had ended, he declared to all those in earshot that he would never fight again. Unless, of course, there arose some other extraordinary set of circumstances, again requiring him to fight, but he certainly hoped not. He still trained regularly, just in case, especially with his fleet-footed friend, Rookie Greentail. He was always grateful for the counsel of the reader, and would regale her over and over about the time they squashed the spawn of the unfathomed Plurinists. By that point, he had long forgotten about his days under the leadership of Sir Deluge, his former commander. Breaking free of his abusive leadership was his first step towards gaining a bit of self-respect. Gilman never did return to his homeland of the Sea Dominion, and was content to lead a monastic life on a small residence in the hills. It was just high up enough to make him keep striving to conquer his fear of heights. Other than that, an intense daily training regimen and the occasional visit from an old companion was more than enough to keep him optimistic and engaged. He knew by then that honor was not something to be won, but contract with oneself to be renewed each day. Sweet. Alright, Hedwyn, yeah. After his liberation, Hedwyn was instrumental in the events leading to the fall of the Commonwealth, and it was vital to the outcome of the plan. The peaceful outcome of their scribe's return was attributed to several key factors. One of them was the underlying ambition of the plan itself. Another was Hedwyn's visibility among the people in the streets. Identified to be the liberated exile, he was believed to be Golgoliathing, reborn. More importantly, however, was that one of the winged harps of the High Wing remnants accompanied him. She was later identified as Bikani Shang. A harp for whom Hedwyn cared deeply. They were separated when Hedwyn was exiled, that's right. Their bond was symbolic of what was at stake that night and proved vital to the peace that followed. In all his days as a leader in the Sarang Union, Hedwyn often confided in his friend Jodario. Right, is this? Okay, weird. Despite her intense manner, there was no one whom he trusted more in times when circumspection was required. Hedwyn would often think back about the vow he made at the beginning of his quest for freedom. Although he cherished all the friendships he had made, he had pledged to Jody, Ruki, and the reader of the Nightwings that they might all be freed again together. His promise had come to pass, though he always knew that this was not his own doing. He was always deeply grateful to the other three, his closest friends. While the others who stood with the Nightwings were not all able to return in contact thus, Hedwyn, though, thought of each of them often, and so in turn did they often think of him. Okay. Tizo! Once the Reds had ended, the Tizo had a job to do. Quite unlike most exiles trapped forever in the downside. The Lone Minstrel asked that he watch over the Black Wagon, which the Nightwings had used extensively for travel and for shelter all throughout their quest. Tizo obliged, for he knew that wagon, as well as its tribe inhabitants, perhaps better than anyone. What became of the wagon exactly was never verified, as evidence of Tizo's thorough work. After that, he liked to while his days with any of his friends, or else with fellow imps. Sandalwood sometimes called for his assistance, and Tizo was always happy to oblige. The two would often reminisce about their times with the Lone Minstrel. Tizo often missed his interactions with the reader and the Nightwings. They had quickly built a quiet rapport back in the downside. Indeed, Tizo would often express wistful gratitude for all this time with the Nightwings, and their many adventures throughout the land that was always his home. Other than that, Tizo would sometimes help interpret or messenger imps relaying news to and from the Sarang Union. Despite having gained insignificant celebrity abroad, he never let it go to his head. But yeah, I'm sure that's accurate. And he would go fishing in the Sea of Solace at every single chance he got. Sandra. After the cycle of the rites ceased turning, records of what happened to the Black Wagon of the Nightwings became inconclusive and contradictory. Some accounts suggest that the exiled Nightwings who remained in the downside continued to make use of the Black Wagon as their place of shelter and their means of travel. However, there is no record of what happened to the wagon's contents, such as the Book of Rites or the Beyonder Crystal, said to be haunted by the apparition of Sandra the Unseeing. One possibility is that the Lone Minstrel took his leave and took the Beyonder Crystal with him, for he was thus obliged. By this line of reasoning, however, the Black Wagon itself should have been taken also. Others remain skeptical that the Beyonder Crystal ever existed, or rather that the visions that it granted were anything other than the result of an active imagination or a fever dream. The bog dwellers of the southern bogs offer still another explanation, for they are familiar with binding enchantments. If there exists such an object in which the Sisters of the Arch had been expelled for more than 800 years, then the enchantment could have expired along with the light of the stars. What this would have meant for Sandra and the Beyonders is difficult to say for certain, other than it may have meant that they were finally released. Nevertheless, the fates of Sandra and the Beyonder Crystal remain unknown. Yet, those exiles of the Nightwings who claim to have seen this apparition all spoke of her with regards of reverence and perhaps a little fear. I thought we took Sandra with us. Oh, okay. Can you believe this, reader? Honestly. Sandra has appeared before you, as well you can see. They are so far from the mark with all this nonsense, I am wont to laugh. In fact, here goes. Okay, she laughs. She's referring to the account of her. You sense she does not care for it. Well, then let them gossip all they like. I merely wish that they would mention you at least in passing, when next they are at it, though they shall never know even the half of it, shall they? Sandra seems irritated by the incomplete account of what happened to her. Reassure her, the account was relatively flattering despite a lack of detail. It could have been worse. Perhaps making some light of the situation would make Sandra feel better. Yeah, let's humor her. You indicate to Sandra that the real truth of what happened between you and you would perhaps make two lascivious? That's a word I've never seen before in my life. Lascivious. A tale to be told in such a format. Lascivious. Okay. She makes a amused sound at this. Perhaps that story ought to get out then. To think that they would go to all the trouble to make literacy accepted once again, only to print such drivel. Anyway, let us keep going, lovely reader. We know the truth of it. That's all that matters. She fades into beyond her crystal for now, and you took it away safely. Okay, that's cool. I like how that little tidbit was thrown in there. Oh, Lendl. Oh, I want to see what happened to this scumbag. After the final liberation rite, Lendl refused to believe that the rites had truly ended. He would sit through night after consecutive night, staring into the blackness of the sky, awaiting any kind of sign that he might gain another chance of freedom. No such sign ever came. His fellow accusers started to express concern for him. Survival had become their top priority once liberty had slipped from their grasp. But Lendl dismissed them as weak fools. He insisted rather forcefully that any evening now, the stars would shine for him again and mark the way towards his inevitable freedom. He was of course mistaken. He was of course a liar. The others in his triumvirate were left with little choice but to abandon him. After that, the exile known as Lendl the Liar was never seen again. However, there have since become sightings of a bedraggled demon who wanders the downside and bears Lendl's cruel countenance, suggesting he yet lives. Okay. Okay, Poppy, I want to know what happened to him. As the cycle of the rites drew to a close, it grew evident that a chance of freedom for the downside had forever slipped from Dalbert and Almer Oldheart's grasp. Thus they and the exiles of the Fate returned to Jomer Valley. There they struggled to get by, as exiles of the downside tend to do. Sometime after the rites had ended, Oldhearts at last heard the news that the Commonwealth had fallen. This was well after the fact, of course, but it brought old Dalbert great joy. Despite his forthright manner, he had no love for the nation that cast him down, along with his son. Dalbert Oldheart passed peacefully in his sleep before the next new moon. In his final days, he implored his son to undertake pilgrimage to the scribes. Almer never shared his father's view of the scribes, but respected Dalbert's wishes, and so after a period of mourning, Almer began a new journey. Not a day went by that Almer Oldheart did not think about his father, and give thanks to him and speak to him at morning and at night. Would that the stars yet shone, for surely Dalbert's would be among them, smiling down at his son and watching over him and his kin. Ah, that's sweet. Alright, let's see what Sir Deluge here got himself up into. All his life, Sir Deluge had fled from one danger only to find himself facing another. He had escaped the war-torn waters of the Sea Dominion, he had escaped the blood border of the Commonwealth, and now he had escaped the rites. After the rites had ended, many exiles wrapped up in the ancient tests were crestfallen as their last chances to return to their homes vanished, along with the stars above. But Deluge did not mind, for this outcome meant that at last there was no burden of responsibility weighing him down. While most of his fellow exiles of Pyre hearts yet longed for the waters of the Sea Dominion, driven as ever by their impulses towards conflict, Deluge settled down. With him remained one of his companions, Lady Seagrass, who had taken a liking to him, for some reason. Reportedly, they disappeared into the waters of Worm Gulf, which may begin to explain the significant increase in worm population observed in the vicinity. You know what, I'm glad for Sir Deluge. He stopped being a scumbag, and that's good. Yeah, okay. Miss, I lost 5 hope because OvoCephalon's playing is way too good. After the cycle of the rites had ceased, Witch Uldmil returned to the Flagging Hands region, where she had sealed herself within the Pit of Milithe. There, even her fellow exiles of the Withdrawn allegedly grew unnerved after a time and left her to her vile work. Sometime later, the Pit of Milithe erupted into flame. So intense was the conflagration that it could be seen all the way from Jomer Valley. Arson was suspected, though the cause was never verified, and many bog dwellers in this region were forced to flee. A tempest blowing from the north finally quenched the flames. When at last the ashes settled and the grounds had cooled, the site of the fire was scarred beyond recognition, no trace of which Uldmil could be found. As for the contents of the Pit of Milithe, which, notably, included a profane object thought to be the remains of Yslock, all of it was gone as well. Back in the Syrian Union, Uldmil's repeated threats of the return of Yslock were thoroughly investigated, and no credence was found to any of her claims. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Barker Ashpaws over here! Barker Ashpaws never had much interest in returning to the Commonwealth, for he always found its bylaws to be stifling, so when the rites ended, he did not care at first. But soon he grew very bored. The rites had given his life a certain sense of structure and he had always needed. He missed the raw anticipation of it all. He decided to continue conducting the rites for the thrill of it. He bent some of the rules and replaced some of the objects, but it was close enough. His packmates, dissidents, proved more than happy to participate, and thus they ran against each other back in Jomer Valley. Gradually, other exiles familiar with the rites, as well as those who had not heard of it at all, started to take interest. They ended up giving Barker Ashpaw some healthy competition. His old feud with Rookie Greentail ceased meaning anything to him, and he forgot all about it amid his new pursuits. Ultimately, even Barker Ashpals, who had led such a directionless existence at that point, found something of calling through the rites. Whether he took the rites less seriously than any other exile of his time, or more, was oft debated by those who watched him work. Huh, good outcome for him, I like that. Throughout her exile, Tamitha Thing was motivated by a single goal, to return the Commonwealth and exact vengeance on her ancient enemies. When she realized the rites had ended, and that she would never see her mountain home again, she nonetheless remained determined to aid her people however possible. She had gathered certain information pertaining to the intentions of the Nightwings, who had formed a pact to regroup on the other side after their liberation. Other such reports exposed certain weaknesses in the Commonwealth's defenses and revealed to the High Wing remnants the opportunity for a risky but potentially impactful strike. As Tamitha could not participate in the assault, she learned what happened well after the outcome. On the night known as the Scribe's Return, the Commonwealth had fallen. The High Wing remnants thus prevailed at last without even having to fight. Soon after the fall of the Commonwealth, Tamitha learned her blood sister Pamitha was an accessory to the successful outcome. Tamitha was very skeptical about all this, but as similar reports kept mounting, she soon accepted the prevailing opinion, however grudgingly. Once a messenger imp arrived bearing some sort of news, seemingly from Pamitha. However, Tamitha turned it away. She would not give in to an impulse to forgive. Knowing that the conflict on the other side had ended, Tamitha retreated to the crags of the Black Basin and grew ever more distant. Those closest to her surmised that her inability to reconcile with her blood sister was at the heart of this, though for her part, Tamitha never once admitted to any such weakness. Seems like something we could have made better, but, well, oh well. Our playthrough has ended, so too late to go back and change anything. When manly Tinderstoff realized the rites had ended, and that he no longer could return to the Commonwealth, through this ancient means, he was outraged, of course he was. He cursed the scribes, spewing forth such a slew of blasphemy as to be very unbecoming of one of such high status and bearing. When at last he calmed himself, he focused all his energies on attempting to find another means of a homecoming. He maintained regular contact with his wealthy family on the other side of the Messenger Imp, and used their vast resources to help explore other means of escape. He tried using an elaborate pulley system. He attempted to retrofit a flying black wagon with superior propulsion. He tried an imp craft, a hot air balloon, even prayer. Nothing worked. There was only one way to escape the downside, and now it was gone. Tinderstoff bankrupted his family in these vain attempts. At last, such was his shame that he retreated to the teeming woods of Black Basin to Cinderroot. There he yet wallows, complaining to his comrades of chastity who still put up with him, either about his own misfortune or the latest news from the other side. Fair enough. Oh man, it's like super raining outside. Sorry, I got distracted because it got like... The sound started getting heavier and heavier. Once it became clear to Ignarius that the rites were drawing to a close, he knew that it was time for him and the Templars to call it quits. But first, he and the Templars decided to celebrate. They did for many, many nights. The rivalry did eventually subside. The exiles parted amicably and went their separate ways. He roamed the downside, then searching for some meaning in his life, sometimes taking odd jobs requiring his brute strength. He never remained alone for very long, and took on many lovers in his time. However, he saw something about one he sometimes he sometimes thought about the one he called Curly Horns and what had become of her. Through his glory days, as the most powerful conductor of the rites had long since passed, he always enjoyed the fearsome reputation he had once cultivated at the time. Okay, not quite a good outcome for him, but you know, c'est la vie. I can't make Jodie come back down here so the two of them can be happy, and I don't know if she wants to. Orlek, let's go. After the Shimmer Pool closed for what would be the last time, Orlek looked around him in the flickering light of the Nightwing's still burning pyre. He then turned toward the fall of Solium and looked up towards the black, starless sky. After staying thus for some time, he averted his gaze and walked away without a word. Orlek then relinquished his freedom of his own free will. Perhaps in realizing this, he saw no reason to remain there on the sacred mountain. For many moons, he wandered the downside alone. Eventually, however, he would reunite with the exiles he stood with, the true Nightwings, where they each cared for him. The one he had called the Shadow of the False Nightwings was someone whom he thought about at times. He wondered if this reader had had an influence over the Commonwealth's fall. News must have reached him eventually about the outcome of Wilfred Sandalwood's plan. One day, he appeared before his former companion. While they kept private the details of the conversations that took place, it must have been enough to rebuild the bonds of friendship between the two of them. They were often seen together after that. Orlek later returned with Tizo, who would join his travels. Who rejoined his who joined, that's right. It was much like olden times, and in that regard, and the imp always enjoyed his company. Still in the Syrian Union, no one remembered the former chief physician who had fallen into exile decades prior. No one knew just how close he had come to altering the outcome of the final liberation rite, and thus perhaps to altering the course of history. Today, however, this is not the case. Accounts from other exiles of the downside have ensured that Orlek's place in the events that shape our world are known and shall be known. Alright, the Tarek and Celeste. After the cycle of the rites ceased turning, the lone minstrel bade the remaining Nightwings take the Black Wagon and seek their fortunes elsewhere in the downside. Their parting was heartfelt but brief. He remained there at the summit of Mount Melodia with Celeste, where the two of them would chronicle the final outcome of the cycle. Hold on, let me just clear my throat. Neither Tarek nor Celeste were ever seen again. We know all this now through a song attributed to them. Some claim these songs originated in the taverns of the Syrian Union and merely were imbued with weight of folklore. However, exiles liberated from the downside corroborated each other's claims at having met this duo that presided over the liberation rites. Another folktale suggests these minstrels were heralds of the scribes. Having fulfilled their obligations, they departed the world we know and rejoined their companions. One of their famous songs described another, simpler outcome, that the two gave up their duties to the rites in favor of life that they could share together. In any case, they are likely to remain the subject of such verses and such songs, for it was they who watched over the rites and ushered in our times. Good stuff, man. There is one more account which warrants mention. The Nightwings conducted the rites under the guidance of a reader. Little is known of her. However, some accounts of her begin to paint a picture. We know she was of common birth, weak-framed though raised with a penchant for learning. The journey to the downside left her close to death. It was then that the Nightwings found her. They brought her from the brink. She showed them the path. She pressed onward with the others. She had made a vow to help her friends be free. Thus did the cycle of the rites commence its final turn. When the final rite arrived, the reader's freedom was at stake. That freedom she indeed achieved ere the morning's light. From that point on, accounts of her diverge. It is said that the voice which troubled her, she never heard again. Some say she helped to form our Syrian Union, though whether that is true, only she knows. Someday perhaps the reader's own star shall emerge. Then it shall pierce the darkness of night in all its brilliant glory. Until such a time, and even after, all of us give thanks.
Their journey began on a barren waste where the reader arrived, afraid and alone. When she arrived, the book of rites awakened the Nightwings and ignited the flame. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in our brain till the end. We sing of the last of the Nightwings who, having broken the cycle, shall live on in song. Headwind prevailed and strode the path that his heart laid before him. He has found his way home. Captain Joe Dariel, mother to many a foundling, she has found her way home. Rookie Greentail has proved his worth and returned to his family by the grace of the scribes. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in a braid till the end. The moon-touched girl hears the scribes in the world all around her. they have guided her home.
'Tis all the wise, ever faithful to the cause of the night wings. He remained to the end.
Sir Gilman the bold, ever in his quest, finding honor and glory, he has found his way home. Pameth the Thane, having pleased the scribe, seeking only forgiveness, she has found her way home. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in a braid till the end. Bound together, spirits tether, strands unbroken, spines awoken.
The great mastermind, Wolfred Sandalwood, saw his plans turn to action. He remained till the end. The bog dweller Bertrude kept their foes at bay with her finest enchantments. She remained till the end.
The reader at last made the night wings whole and ascended to freedom. She has found her way home. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in a braid till the end. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in a braid till the end. Now at the end, as we bid farewell and return to the stars, we shall find our way home. We shall find our way home. We shall find our way
I think we found our way home, guys. Oh, well, that's nice to know. Alright, sweet. Now that we can finally engage in discourse at the very end of it. Yeah, so, that was a whole lot of freaking fun, man. I hope you enjoyed it as well, man or lady, or even dog, apparently. Although, you know what, if your dog's watching this, shout out to them. I've never seen a dog be able to focus on anything for more than like 30 seconds, but yeah, if they watch the entire series, God, good God. But yeah, anyway, yeah, this has been a whole lot of fun, and we'll return with something else next time. I don't know what it is yet, but I have a couple of ideas. But yeah, until then, I've been OvoCephalon, you've been the audience, and this has been Pyre, and I would love for you to come back next time and join me again. But for now, escape to go back. Let's start from the very beginning, yeah, but for now, goodbye.